Hello and welcome to A Journey to Awareness. Are you ready to take a voyage to the uncharted places within you, where you will be guided to ways to heal your wounds, look at your life choices, release your fears, and take control of your future? Stick with me through these podcasts and you will take the most exciting adventure of your life, the journey to you. Let's go. Hello and welcome. I'm Shauna Hoffman. I am so excited for this episode because Valentine's Day is the 1-year anniversary of the launch of this podcast. 1 year. Wow. Did I ever think when I started it that today would come? And we hit 3,000 downloads this week. That just blew me out of the water to think about. I started this podcast with the sole purpose of being able to help people on their journey to self-awareness, a journey that sometimes is so gentle and uplifting and other times can be so painful and hard. Every listener that I have is in a different place at the time they hit play on the podcast. But for me, knowing that I could be there for you through this process is what brings me so much joy. And what you don't know is how much you've been there for me. Every download, every like, every comment was a way for me to know I was helping. But it was searching for the theme of every podcast that was my own journey to awareness. Many times the topic for that week had something to do with something going on in my own life, or something going on in the world that I knew if I discussed on the podcast, it would bring me answers or insight that I needed. Working through it on the podcast with my listeners, with all of you, was like my own therapy. Other times, the topic was brought on by an issue I was helping a client with, so I knew that if I could go into more depth on the podcast, they'd get more relief or more answers. So I thought it may be fun if today I took you on a behind-the-scenes tour of the podcast world. In other words, the Journey to Awareness of the Journey to Awareness podcast. Well, the beginning of this podcast was truly inspired by my brilliant friend, Jody Colvard. Jody Colvard is the founder and CEO of FMG Networks, Voices of Women, and the Podcast School. She is a powerhouse that empowers writers, speakers, and experts to share their voices and messages through podcasting, radio, TV. Well, she truly inspired me and set me on the right track. I learned everything from her. She helped me get the website ready to launch. She's the brains behind all of the production of this podcast. And lucky for me, she taught me how to edit the podcast each week. Or more likely, lucky for her, because this was definitely a work in progress. This podcast would not have happened, I promise you, if it were not for Jody Colvard. So here, my goddess friend, I say thank you. I think what I want to share with all of you about this process is that I really knew nothing except my topic and I had my speaking abilities. But with the right support system, I went for it. I'm sharing this with you because I hope it may inspire you to go after some dream that you have that you may be clueless how to actually do. I'm hoping that you can believe in yourself enough to surround yourself with people who also believe in you and have the knowledge that you might not have. You know, it really is okay to not be adept at something and you can still start it. We learn so much from our mistakes, and every time we have a new accomplishment, it is the most empowering feeling. Okay, this reminds me of an experience that we had with our sailing instructor. Many of you know I'm a sailor and I love to use sailing analogies when I speak or when I write. I use them on this podcast all the time. Well, we were out on our boat, the Illusion. I was having the best time and I felt so confident. Then at one moment I was about to tack, which means you're going to change your sails so you can change the direction. And all of a sudden our sailing instructor said, "Wait, are you going to do that?" I froze. I said, Why? What? What? Shouldn't I? He said nonchalantly, "It's up to you. You're the captain." I said, "But am I about to make a big mistake?" He says, "I don't know. Try it. You'll soon find out." Oh my God, really? So I really had to think it through and decide what to do. After a minute, I realized that I did know the answer, and what I was about to do was totally fine. So I did it, and then he laughed. Seriously, I was like, you just put me through hell for a minute. And his answer was, no, you put yourself through hell. You see, he was just empowering me to be confident in my choices and confident in my own knowledge. I'd hired the best, and he taught me right. At some point, I had to believe in myself. I think we so often second-guess ourselves, and that stops us dead in our tracks. But when we're truly self-aware, we can take a moment to check in and see the truth within. We have the opportunity in every moment to put other people's voices aside, or for that matter, our own negative voices, to find the answers within. And better yet, to realize that we actually already have them. Truly, that negative voice is hella loud. We have to shut it down so we can hear that soft, confident, and honest voice that knows us better than anyone. The one that says, yes, you've got this. Okay, back to this podcast. I had the best support system with Jody teaching me. I knew the knowledge I had to offer my listeners, and I just had to do it. So 1 year ago, I decided to allow myself to not be perfect, to allow myself to make mistakes along the way, and to allow myself to learn and grow. But I could do it all because I had a mission to help people find happiness, to find those places within that need to grow, to find forgiveness of themselves and others, and maybe to laugh along the way. Deep within me, I knew why I wanted to do this, and all I had to do was start. Okay, back to the behind-the-scenes tour. After I record and edit the podcast, Jody takes it and adds the intro and the outro and uploads it into the podcast platforms and onto my website. And now it's out in the world. But how do people find it? Enter social media. Oh, I must admit, it is the weakest part of this process for me. I absolutely love making the memes with my quotes or other people's quotes, but that's where it ends. So I finally hired social media experts to do it right. Again, it was admitting that I sucked at something so I could get help. Wait a minute. I didn't have to be a pro at everything? No. Now I have these two brilliant souls, George and Sam, who do it for me. Yeah, it's just fine to check your ego and get help. It's also fine to let others be there for your dream as long as they believe in you and your message. Hashtag surround yourself with loving beings. But what I also learned is that it was word of mouth from my listeners, all of you sharing the podcast, that made the biggest difference. I have people send a link to a friend who may need it, or a partner who's not hearing them, and they think the podcast will help. FYI, the biggest shared episode for couples, episode number 39, The Art of Healthy Fighting. I have newly single men or women who are reinventing their lives. I have therapists and healers that share it with their clients. I have moms and daughters that listen to it together. This really brought me back to the why of this podcast. My purpose, the podcast's purpose, to make a difference in people's lives. And that is also why the podcast had a massive name change and new branding. The initial name was Guy Free Working on Me. It was based on my book. It was for all women on their journey, whether in a relationship or not. It was meant to show you that you need to find yourself, whether in a relationship or not, in order to find happiness. Well, hell, big lesson in branding there. It missed a whole audience I was trying to reach. Then I heard about so many men who were listening to it, and that was it. Name change, a journey to awareness. One of the things I found fascinating is the way I can track the messages people need to hear by watching the downloads. The most downloaded episodes seem to track 2020 perfectly. My most downloaded episode was also the hardest one for me to do. It was episode 21, The Great Unlearning. It was recorded the week of the Black Lives Matter protests. So many podcasters went quiet that week. For me, I looked deep within to truly explore my own prejudices and where they came from. It was very hard to do. But again, it was a podcast that by helping all of my listeners look within, I also helped myself. The second most downloaded podcast went up the week of the election. Episode number 42, Calgon, Take Me Away. We all needed to take a really deep breath and find a way to relax that week. It was funny because I was afraid to call it that for fear that my younger listeners may not get the reference. But I promise you, I took so many relaxing baths that week. To this day, it's my favorite episode to send my clients to who are having a stressful time. Calgon, Take Me Away. And right along with the world, my last podcast of 2020, episode number 49, The Gift of Time, is the next most downloaded episode. We all needed it and may still need a way to reimagine 2020. What brought me peace was realizing that for so many of us, 2020 was a gift of time to be with loved ones, not to work so hard, to work on ourselves, to get creative, and so much more. I hoped it gave my listeners a really, really nice change in perception. Now, my most fun episode I recorded the entire year was for my birthday. Oh, please, please, go listen to it. Episode number 30, Your Wisdom Day, Ain't It Fab? I had such a great time rethinking what it means to get older. I imagined our lives if we could just have this counter that marked our wisdom growth versus our age. I mean, we would welcome that number going up. Oh yeah, I got through that fight. I learned a lesson. I broke up with that guy. I learned a lesson. Ding, ding, ding. Your wisdom age has just gone up. It was really a fun episode for me. Feel free to send it to your friends on their birthday. And then there are all the episodes that I had with a guest. I love these. It's so much fun to hear their stories. It's even more fun to share their wisdom, their books, their podcasts. Andra Millian, acupuncturist, healer, she kicked me into gear on taking care of me. Victoria Fye, who's a therapist who with total dedication took 17 years to go after her dream of becoming a social worker and helping humanity. The freaking amazing Lavelda Conrad that shared her story on episode 11 about going from an abused woman, wife and mother, through addiction to learning all about nature, wildlife, and herself as she became, wait for it, an African safari guide. No, really. I could hear her story of reinvention over and over again. Then there was episode 51, Sail Above the Clouds with Carol Fontaine. Okay, listen to that and please go get her book. I'm still delving into her book. There's nothing I love more than empowering men and women. So I brought in Laura Peening to talk about power on episode 32. And then episode 35 with Molly Lida, where she talks about women empowerment, especially in the dating world. And then the quote unquote badass Britt Bolnick, who talks about success through perseverance. Truly, this woman is badass and shows you how to be the same. And that brings me back to this, the 1-year anniversary of a journey to awareness. It's Valentine's week. What if you made this week a love fest to yourself? A love fest to your own dreams. A love fest that gives you permission not to be perfect. A love fest where you surround yourself with amazing humans who adore you and believe in you. A love fest where you love all of your imperfections and see them as an opportunity to truly get to know the you that is deep inside. A love fest that says, yes, 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 you are freaking amazing. And with the right support and people surrounding you, you can do anything that you dream of. A love fest where you walk away from toxic relationships and rise up to say, I deserve. A love fest where you stop judging your body or your age or your faults, but instead adore all that your body can do for you in all its nuances. A love fest of the most magnificent kind. And then with all of that love, you spread your gifts to the world. And more importantly, you receive all the gifts and all the love that the world has to offer you. You know, none of that list is unachievable. In fact, all of it is totally achievable if you're willing to look within, if you're willing to take that beautiful, magical, and unbelievable healing journey to awareness. I love this quote by Oscar Wilde. To love oneself is the beginning of a lifelong romance. Happy Valentine's week, everyone. May the romance endure and fill your soul. To all of you, my sailing partners on this journey, thank you for allowing me to come along. Now go forth this week in self-love as you eat the most nourishing foods, drink lots of water, get so much rest, be kind to yourself, and surround yourself with loving beings as you believe in your own dreams. Thank you for letting me into your life this week, and I look forward to popping back in again next week. Thank you for joining me today on the Journey to Awareness podcast. My hope is that you leave this podcast inspired, fired up, and ready to take that next step on the magical journey of self-awareness. And then you come back and join us again. Oh, and if you can do me a quick favor and please leave me a 5-star review over on iTunes. I gain so much from reading the reviews and getting feedback from my listeners. Thanks again for spending your time with me today. Be sure to visit me on my Facebook page, Working on Me, and on my website, workingonme.com, for past episodes and insight into the fabulous journey to you.